Right now, the day's biggest news stories from a Vegas perspective. This is the Vegas Take with Sharp and Shapiro.
All right, welcome back. It is the Vegas Take, rolling out hour number 2. Glad you could join us, Sharp and Shapiro. We've been talking about this George Zimmerman situation where Zimmerman is now suing the Trayvon Martin family for $100 million and some associates as well. And the main reasoning behind that, there's a newly discovered evidence, apparently, in a recently published book and documentary by this man, Joel Gilbert. It's called The Trayvon Hoax, Unmasking the Witness Fraud That Divided America. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of people that are very upset by this, that Zimmerman is back in the news trying to get some money from the Trayvon family. So we want to find out, what is this new evidence? Why would George Zimmerman do this? And the guy joining us right now on the line is the author and filmmaker of that, The Trayvon Hoax, Joel Gilbert. Joel, thank you for joining us. How are you?
Good morning. Great to be here.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you, Joel.
Okay, Joel, so this might be a loaded question, but explain this to me. Why is Zimmerman suing for $100 million? What is in your film and in your book the evidence to support this lawsuit?
Okay, thanks. It's called The Trayvon Hoax, of course, Unmasking the Witness Fraud That Divided America. And what I did is I got a hold of pretty much just the public evidence in the case from the state of Florida, decided I needed to get to know Trayvon. I started looking into this, really was inspired by Andrew Gillum's candidacy. He had this race-based campaign in Florida against Ron DeSantis. He'd always talk about the Trayvon Martin case. And I just thought I'd look at it from the ground up. And I discovered from reading his text messages, 3,000 text messages in these phone records, that the girlfriend that was the key witness for the prosecution that brought about Zimmerman's arrest, named Rachel Gentile, that she was an imposter, that the real girlfriend was named Diamond Eugene. There was Trayvon texting photos back and forth with his girlfriend, and it wasn't Rachel Gentile that was at the trial. So I did really an investigation. The film is kind of my journey of investigation, how I found the identity of the real girlfriend, why she was switched out for this fake witness, who knew about it, and developing even handwriting analysis and all the evidence. A lot of people forget that Zimmerman was investigated by the Sanford Police Department for about 3 weeks. They looked at the eyewitness testimony, 911 calls, physical evidence, and they said this is pure self-defense, not a stand-your-ground case. And it was only over the next week the Obama administration sent down representatives from the DOJ that actually helped organize protests with Al Sharpton and Benjamin Crump, the family attorney. So the case was over. And then a week later, Benjamin Crump held a press conference, the family attorney, and he held up a digital recorder. He said, we just talked to Diamond Eugene, Trayvon's 16-year-old girlfriend, and played these excerpts. He said, arrest Zimmerman now. We got all the evidence. The next day, Barack Obama came on board. If I had a son, he'd look like Trayvon. State of Florida was...
Which I didn't agree with, by the way. Just for the record, I did not agree with Obama's statement when he said that.
Well, look, here the background of this, of course, is that the black vote was not on board for Obama in 2012. Unemployment, black community was like 70%. Taxes had gone up. Businesses were closing down. And
okay, but
what Obama was up to.
Okay, so but let's not get in the weeds and talk about Barack Obama. Let's focus on what you're talking about, which is Rachel's. Okay, so going back to this case. Later, yeah, go ahead.
Let me finish the chronology for you.
Sure.
So 2 weeks later, the special prosecutors comes down to Miami to interview 16-year-old Diamond Eugene. Mm-hmm. I got the unredacted documents. They go to her house. That's where Diamond Eugene lives. That's the address.
Right. And
they're sent away to a different address for a woman who works for Trayvon's mother, and that's when 18-year-old Rachel Gentile appears, and she says, I'm Diamond Eugene. And even though they knew she was a 16-year-old teenager with a different name, they interview 18-year-old Rachel Gentile, and they based the arrest record for Zimmerman on her testimony. So I have proven that she was a fake witness, and a lot of people must have known about it. Some people did, like Trayvon's mother, of course. That's proven. And
so let me ask you a question then, and I'm sorry to interject here, but didn't Rachel have a phone conversation with Trayvon moments before he was shot?
What I've proven is she was not the girl on the phone with Trayvon. That's the whole point. Diamond Eugene was on the phone with Trayvon. That was the girlfriend. And she would not come forward. She refused to talk to the police or the family attorney because she knew what really happened.
Now, isn't there phone records that can prove that? I don't understand why the defense didn't, or the prosecutors I'm sorry, the defense didn't raise this in testimony and in the trial. This is information that these attorneys could have easily found out. Why didn't George Zimmerman's attorneys pick up on this information back then, if it's true?
I'll tell you what they told me, and it's in the film, is that the prosecutors withheld so much evidence from them. The defense spent 2/3 of their time in court just putting sanctions on prosecutors to force them to give information they had a right to have, including the phone records, which were held back. They also told the defense that Rachel, at the time they said witness number 8, Diamond, was only 16, which was the age of the real girl. And then, so you're not allowed to speak to her until just before the trial. You can do a deposition. So they do the deposition of Rachel, and here comes, of witness number 8, here comes Rachel Gentile. Now she's 19. They lied about her age to prevent her from being interviewed. So there was some malfeasance of the prosecution that was well documented.
This woman is out there somewhere. Have you tried to reach her? Will she talk to anybody?
Well, Diamond Eugene is actually in my movie. I actually go and meet her. Now, I didn't go to meet her for gotcha kind of journalism where I say, okay, tell me everything you know. What I did is I wanted to meet her, and it was part of the investigation, and I wanted to get handwriting samples because there's a very important part of evidence that a letter was given by Diamond Eugene to Trayvon's mother when they first met, and it was signed Diamond Eugene. So Rachel came into court. It's the most memorable part of the trial, and they asked her to read the letter she gave to Trayvon's mother, and she couldn't read. She says, I can't read.
That's true.
And they
I remember
said, what
that.
name did you use? She said, I used the name Diamond Eugene. They said, why'd you use that name? She goes, it's my nickname. So what I've proven is that there really is a girl named Diamond Eugene. She's in the movie, and she would not suborn perjury. I'm sorry, she would not bear false witness against Zimmerman, and that's when Rachel Gentile was substituted in. And it's the seminal division, ground zero for fake news, race hoaxes, and all the downhill of race relations, Black Lives Matter in this country. And that's why I think the film is so important.
So I'm going to let you get back into the weeds. You mentioned how Barack Obama basically, I think what you were getting at, and Brian didn't let you finish, but you were getting at that Barack Obama basically saw this case and recognized that it could be something that could help him sway the African American vote in his favor, and pretty much leverage this to help him win the 2012 election. Is that correct?
Correct. Well said. Look, they sent down the DOJ, and instead of they said, we're going to help investigate, they actually organized protests. Don't forget the backdrop of this was, at the same time, Obama was using the IRS to break up the Tea Party movement. So everything had gone wrong economically. Everything had gotten worse for African Americans in this country. Obama's going to be voted out of office, but they used the tools of state, the IRS and the DOJ, to try to keep a hold on power. So I look in that context, you see how the FBI, CIA, DOJ were used against Trump. It's just more of the same playbook because socialist policies don't work. So they end up using the tools of state to maintain their power and dividing the black community in this way. They were happy to do it. It was a very evil plan. Let's use the tragic death of a troubled black teenager, Trayvon Martin, to put a Hispanic man in prison, Zimmerman, so we can divide and control the black vote. It was a very, very evil plan.
Would you also agree, though, that George Zimmerman is a troubled individual as well? If you're going to call Trayvon Martin troubled, wouldn't you say that George Zimmerman is troubled as well? He's had plenty of issues in his personal life. I would say when you have to sell the gun that you used to kill Trayvon Martin, whether it be self-defense or not. And by the way, I defended George Zimmerman.
Yeah, that was in very bad taste, in my opinion.
Joel, just to be honest with you, I defended George Zimmerman in this aspect. I believe it was self-defense. I believe the evidence that was put forth. I truly do. But I am not a George Zimmerman defender either. He should have never followed Trayvon Martin, even though it wasn't against the law. The 911 dispatcher told him not to. He did. For all we can tell, Trayvon Martin was not doing anything wrong, right? He was not doing anything wrong. I don't blame him for being scared. If he started a physical altercation, I wish he didn't, but we can't blame the kid for that, can we?
Well, what you just did is you just said chapter and verse the media narrative. Just about everything you just said is not true.
Really?
I do encourage you to watch the movie and kind of go through.
Well, just tell me right now. Where am I wrong? The 911 dispatcher told him.
All of it. How much time do we have for the rest of the show?
Tell me one thing.
We have 12 minutes.
Tell me one thing I just said that is not factually accurate.
Just about everything.
Don't say everything. Just give me one thing. Joel.
I'm just you said about 10 things that weren't accurate. I'm just going to start pulling a few of them
Okay.
here. Let me answer the first part of your question before you went on the media narrative.
It wasn't a media narrative. It was my own opinion. So don't say it's a media narrative.
You got it. No, it's the media narrative. This is the.
It's not a media narrative.
narrative.
It's my opinion, Joel. So let's talk about.
No.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, look. The public narrative that was put in the media by Benjamin Crump was opposite of the police report and the police evidence. Okay, his narrative was a small child was minding his own business, delivering candy for his brother when he was stalked, screamed for help, and was shot in cold blood. That's the media narrative, and you're pretty
I didn't
much
say that.
echoing
I didn't say that he was
that's
stalked.
Pretty close. That's pretty
No, I
much
didn't.
close to the Benjamin Crump narrative.
I didn't say that.
Now,
All I said was. Go ahead.
Yeah, as far as Zimmerman, he does appear in the movie. He talks about, of course, what really happened that night, and he also talks about what happened to him afterwards. He did suffer from PTSD. He talks about, kind of being going through a terrible time and acting out very badly because of what happened. And he also describes his background. He said, look, and I think he wrote an article in American Thinker the other day, and he also said in the movie, he said, look, I'm the last person that ever thought I'd be accused of being a bigot. It just crushed me mentally and emotionally. He said, I'm a Hispanic kid. My first language is Spanish. He said, I'm an Obama supporter. I was a social activist. He actually was mentoring black kids whose parents were in prison. That's what he did in his free time.
Can I ask you a question, Joel?
Yeah.
If Trayvon,
so part of the
I understand
part of the narrative.
I understand, but if Trayvon wasn't innocent, what was he up to then?
I'm not saying Trayvon wasn't innocent.
Okay.
I mean, I got to know Trayvon in the last 8 months of his life.
Sure.
He was a good kid. So
Okay.
what happened in his life and caused a downhill spiral was his father left his stepmother, Alicia Stanley, and in November 2011, he had to lost his mother of 12 years and his home. He had to go back and live with his biological mother. He started acting out very badly. He was fighting every day.
What does that have to do with what happened that night?
I'm explaining how he went in this downhill spiral, and he was fighting people all the time and smoking heavy marijuana use. So he got in this situation that really contributed to it. And the media wanted, as a result of this case, for people to believe, for black citizens to believe that there are armed white men in the streets and cops of all colors that want to shoot you because of your skin color.
I understand.
When the reality you learn from the film, the reality is the real problem for black youth is the absence of strong black men in the home to give guidance. Trayvon didn't have a father in the home. He lost his mother. He was a good kid that went into this downhill spiral of fighting and drug use.
Right, but I think, Joel, I understand. And by the way, if you're just joining us, we're speaking with Joel Gilbert, author, filmmaker, new film, The Trayvon Hoax, one of the main reasons why George Zimmerman is suing the family and some others for $100 million. Okay, let's just go back to what you said earlier, though. What I said was, it didn't appear to me or anyone that night that Trayvon was committing a crime. For some reason, George Zimmerman thought he was a suspicious character. This isn't a narrative. I'm trying to speak facts here. And the 911 dispatcher said, no, you don't need to follow him. You don't need to do that. That's what the 911 dispatcher said. And I'm not saying George Zimmerman broke the law. I've never said that. But George Zimmerman...
Well, I'll tell you,
go ahead.
I'll tell you from the film what George explained, which is different from that kind of media narrative. He said he was driving by and going to Target, and that the neighborhood watch people said, if you see anybody that's hanging around or suspicious, you got to call the non-emergency. So
Right.
He said he saw Trayvon standing in between two buildings in the rain, not making any effort to get out of the rain. And he was responding because they had so many robberies in the neighborhood. So you got to watch the film where he goes through every little thing of the dispatcher, for example. He said that the dispatcher kept asking him where the person had gone so he could tell the police officer. It's the only reason he got out of his car. So you really got to watch the film to see this whole step-by-step thing of what is different and decide for yourself. Listen to Zimmerman's explanation.
And I will do that.
Listen to the 911 call.
And I will do that. But
if you're here's the thing. If you're open-minded, you can take a new look at this because the media railroaded this case. Like they do with everything else.
I understand, but I'm trying to
hold on 1 second. Just like the media told you 2 months ago that without no questions asked, they said a black girl in Virginia had her dreadlocks cut off by 3 white kids. And then the next day they told you that Mike Pence's wife works at this school. They were so happy. And then the third day they said, hoax. Sorry, the mother said it was a hoax. So the media plays these games, and no one has suffered more than the black youth of America from this Trayvon hoax, where they put this narrative out there that America suddenly became racist. I was grew up in Tennessee in the 80s, black and white kids all together, all friends, never heard the N-word. And the media wants us to believe 40 years later that America became racist. So there are tragic incidents that happen with police, with individuals around the country, with terrible circumstances. But it's not because America is racist, and you don't need to divide the country because of a tragic incident.
Two questions.
And that's yeah.
Sorry, Joel. But two questions. The first,
Sure.
Do you think that George Zimmerman is? I mean, do you think that asking for $100 million is reasonable, and why? And the second question: where all can we watch this film if we want to?
Okay, in reverse, if you go to the TrayvonHoax.com, you can watch the trailer, first of all. You can also live stream the movie right there. I hope you guys will watch it. Have me back on. I'd love to continue. You can also jump over to Amazon for the DVD or the book or ebook version, and your head will spin. My head's still spinning. I worked on this for like a year, and you just won't believe what they did, not only to manipulate this case, but how it affected the country. As far as the lawsuit, I'm going to refer you over to maybe Zimmerman's attorney. He can comment on that.
All right, and that's fair enough. Look, I'm gonna give you this promise. I am gonna watch this film, and we will have you back on.
I will too.
But I have to bring this up because you talk about media narrative. There have been people that have been saying things about you, and I want you to be able to defend yourself and respond to this. Okay? You've made appearances on the Alex Jones Show, InfoWars show. I'm from Connecticut, where Alex Jones said that school shooting never happened. He was sued for that. I think Alex Jones is just a bad guy that's looking for clicks. You have also, and correct me if I'm wrong. If I'm wrong, I want you to set the record straight on this show. You've claimed that former President Barack Obama's real father was a Chicago communist. You've also claimed that Paul McCartney is dead. I just saw Paul McCartney in concert at T-Mobile Arena. I can tell you right now he's alive. And you've also claimed that Elvis Presley is alive. He's not dead. Are those comments that you made, and do you still stand by those comments?
Yeah, you're a lot of confusion there. I've made 15 documentary feature films on the Middle East, on Bob Dylan, the Iranian nuclear program, on Donald Trump. I made 2 mockumentaries, which are comedies. They're hilarious. They're based on the urban legend, Paul McCartney really is dead. It's one of the funniest movies you'll ever see. And Elvis Found Alive, also, it's kind of the opposite of 2 rock and roll legends. So those are great movies. I recommend them.
So they're comedies then. So you're just having fun with it.
Obviously, they're comedies.
Mockumentaries, yeah.
Okay.
Obviously. All right. Now, Alex, look, conservatives have nowhere to go with our movies. So Alex Jones has had hundreds of guests on. And because he had a huge audience at one time, you go on an interview and you talk about your movie and you sell hundreds of movies. So you have to go where there's an audience. So obviously the hundreds of people who've been on his show or been interviewed are not responsible for something stupid he said 10 years ago or 5 years ago. There's no guilt by association, okay? So who knows? I have no idea what he says 5 years ago, and I'm not responsible. But his audience did buy my movie, so what are you going to do? Now, as far as the movie Dreams from My Real Father, that's about Obama's background, I investigated very thoroughly, and I presented a movie that shows a tremendous mountain of evidence that Obama's real biological father and ideological mentor was a black Bolshevik out of Chicago named Frank Marshall Davis. He looks just like him. In Obama's book, Dreams from My Father, he talks about Frank Marshall Davis throughout the entire book. Malik Obama, who was Obama's alleged half-brother from Kenya, who was the best man at his wedding, is a friend of mine, and he agrees that with my film that he doesn't think that Barack Obama, the Kenyan student, was the biological father of Obama. So there's a ton of evidence in there, and it really was not about the DNA as much as it about the ideology. Obama was raised by Frank Marshall Davis, by his own admission, was an anti-American communist in Chicago. And you can just see how the policy and ideology is similar to Frank Marshall Davis. So I do invite you to watch that film. You can watch it on Amazon Prime, and we can talk about that as well.
Okay, so let me ask you this question then. And I appreciate you clearing that up with the McCartney-Elvis stuff, because that was a little strange, and I didn't know the background of that. And I'm glad that
Comedies, my friend.
I'm glad that you cleared that up. And maybe I might watch those films now. But let me ask you this.
Absolutely.
You know what people on the left are going to say? They're going to say, well, wait a second. How come you're only going after people on the left? Have you done any documentaries? Have you done any investigations on Donald Trump or any Republican for that matter? What would you say to that?
Well, you can look at my movie, Farewell Israel, Bush, Iran, and the Revolt of Islam. It's a very bad critique of Bush's Middle East policy, the naivety of it, his idea of creating a freedom agenda in the Middle East after 9/11. I say that he played into the hands of al-Qaeda, that there was a misunderstanding of what the goal of al-Qaeda was in 9/11. The goal was to draw America into the Middle East,
Right.
to get rid of these dictatorships, because the Al-Qaeda wanted to get rid of these secular military dictatorships all over the Islamic world, because they knew if there were free elections, they would vote for Islamic parties, the natural grassroots movement in the Islamic world.
Yeah.
And that's what happened. So it's very critical of Bush, disastrous misunderstanding of the Middle East, the Iraq War, everything. So I kind of go where the facts take me and my interest takes me. And I can tell you in this film, my biggest supporters, the best emails I've had for the Trayvon hoax are black teenagers.
Right.
They're emailing me and saying, I grew up with this stuff. I have a black son, and I was afraid of him growing up in America. We got played. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Well,
those are they get it. They get it.
Let me be very clear on this, Joel. If this is true, what you have uncovered, then people need to go down for it. Then people need to pay for it. Make no mistake about it. I'm not on one side or the other here. I'm going to watch your film. I'm going to make my own conclusions. What was the Michael Brown situation, where it was the hands up, don't shoot narrative?
Yeah.
That really bothered me, as I think it bothered many Americans.
Or the Eric Garner situation.
Let's focus on Michael Brown. And you're right, Eric Garner's a different situation because there's actual video of it. But did you ever consider doing a documentary on Michael Brown? Because I personally believe that police officer did not do anything wrong.
Look, it's a similar thing. It's all about sloganeering with the media. You forget that Benjamin Crump, the family attorney, put out the narrative, Skittles and iced tea. He just had Skittles and iced tea. Now the next slogan is, hands up, don't shoot. There's always a slogan for the media that they run with, and they never even question it. For example, Rachel Jeantel, in this case, her story kept changing. Nobody thought in the media ever to ask her, Rachel, you said you heard your friend was being followed and stalked and screamed for help and was shot in cold blood. Why didn't you call the police for the 30 days? They didn't even think to ask her that. They didn't ask her, how come you're 18 and your name, as Crump said, you're 16 and your name is Diamond Eugene? No one asked her that. I got interviewed by the Today Show, NBC reporter. He said, how can this be true? I was at the trial. How could you put together this story? Is it a conspiracy? And I said, who are you to question my journalism? What did you do for the past 6 years? You could have walked into the state of Florida and gotten these same documents and seen, obviously, Diamond is sending Trayvon a photo. It's not Rachel Jeantel, who's about 150 pounds heavier, and start there, and you'll find all the evidence. If I could do it in 3 months,
sure,
you could have done it, and the state of Florida should have done it with all their subpoena powers.
Well, that's certainly a fair point. Well, listen, Joel, I got to be honest with you. I was a little skeptical when I read some of this stuff, but having you on, I'm glad you were able to clear some of this stuff up for us. I will give you our promise that we are going to watch this film, The Trayvon Hoax, and we'd love to have you back on again and talk about it, okay?
I'd love to do it. Thanks for having me.
All right. Appreciate
thanks a lot,
it.
Joel.
There you go. That's Joel Gilbert, author, filmmaker of The Trayvon Hoax. We are up against a hard break here, but when we come back, we will take your calls on this. I know there's probably a lot of people that have a lot to say about this. 702-257-5396. Again, that number to call if you want to be a part of this conversation. What do you think about George Zimmerman now suing for $100 million? What do you think about this guy with this new movie out? Do you think there's credibility to it? Give us a buzz, 702-257-5396. Take a quick break. Be back right after this. You are listening to The Vegas Take. All right, welcome back. It is The Vegas Take, Sharp and Shapiro. By the way, a reminder, coming up in hour number 3, we're going to be catching up with a former UNLV quarterback, Caleb Herring. He's going to have a lot to say about what went down with Tony Sanchez, and I have a feeling we're going to get into some disagreements, which is a good thing because I love Caleb. He's a smart guy and very, very much in tune with what's going on with UNLV and the firing of Tony Sanchez. He'll be joining us coming up here at the top of the hour. I want to continue talking about this George Zimmerman story because it's a big one. And it was a big story back then, and now it's entering the news cycle again. Why, you ask? Well, we just had Joel Gilbert on. He's the author, filmmaker of The Trayvon Hoax, where in that film, which I haven't seen yet, but I'm going to see, claiming that at least one witness that said that she was Trayvon Martin's girlfriend is a liar, that it was made up, fabricated. And if it is, then people are going to go down for it. And that is why George Zimmerman is now suing Trayvon Martin family and others for $100 million, which is unbelievable. And there's a lot of people that are very upset about this.
That number's too high.
Well, whether it's $1 million or $100 million, their son is dead. If somebody did construct a fake witness up there, for God's sakes, man, they lost their son.
Not only that, but it would have nothing to do with. I mean, honestly, I feel like he's suing the wrong people, assuming whatever Joel Gilbert told us is true. Why is Trayvon Martin's family the one that he's suing? It doesn't make any sense to me. I feel
should be law enforcement.
Exactly.
and attorneys.
He should be suing law enforcement, attorneys, possibly.
Yeah.
The actual city itself.
Yeah. Oh, look, there's no question. Like what happened in
it's the wrong target.
There's no question what happened in Ferguson and some of these police shootings. The narratives are not correct. And there are some instances where police officers are responsible for the deaths or murders of whether it be a minority or somebody who's white. Police officers sometimes, in some instances, are murderers, sadly. But the majority of police officers, I've always said, are good people and are heroes. Now, going back to this Zimmerman situation. Now, I asked Joel Gilbert, what did I say that was incorrect? What did I say that was not factual? I simply put forth, it's not a narrative, it's the facts. He called 911. Trayvon Martin wasn't doing anything wrong. There was no reason to call 911. You could make the excuse, well, we've had a lot of people do a lot of bad things in this neighborhood. That has absolutely nothing to do with Trayvon Martin, and there's no evidence to support the fact that Trayvon was doing anything wrong that night. I don't care if he was arrested 100 times before that. We're talking about his behavior that night. Trayvon Martin wasn't doing anything wrong. He had an iced tea and Skittles in his pocket that he paid for, by the way, and he didn't do anything wrong. So what does Zimmerman decide to do? Zimmerman decides to call the police. And the dispatcher says the police are coming out there to check. And then the dispatcher says, we don't need you to follow him. Don't do that, sir. What does Zimmerman do? He's not a police officer. He's not even an armed paid security guard. He's a neighborhood watch guy, whatever the hell that is. He decides to follow Trayvon Martin. So you have to say to yourself, if Zimmerman didn't take it into his own hands and follow Trayvon Martin would still be alive today. With that being said, the other side of it is this. Unfortunately, the way the laws are put in place, Zimmerman did not break the law. There was no law that said he couldn't get out of his car and follow Trayvon Martin. There was no law that said he had to abide by what the 911 dispatcher told him to do. So there are two sides to this. He didn't break the law. He's a moron, but you can be a moron without breaking the law. All the evidence points towards the fact that Trayvon Martin started the physical confrontation, that Trayvon Martin was on top of George Zimmerman, punching him and putting his head into the pavement. And I got to tell you, if somebody was doing that to me, I would probably shoot them too. With that being said, this is an awful tragedy. Trayvon Martin should have wanted to move on. George Zimmerman should have wanted to move on from this years ago. Trayvon Martin doesn't have a voice. He's dead. He's 6 feet underneath the ground. His parents, his family, friends, never going to see him again. George Zimmerman could still live his life. So now you're going to get back into the news and you're going to try to sue this family for $100 million. This is absurd. What do you guys think out there? What do you think about this case? What do you think about George Zimmerman suing for $100 million? Are you okay with this? I'm not okay with it. 702-257-5396 is the number to call. Again, that number to call, 702-257-5396 if you want to be a part of the conversation. Let's go to Bruce. Bruce, thanks for calling in. What's on your mind?
Hey, what's up, Bruce?
Hey, good morning, JD. Good morning, Brian. Real quick, I lived in Florida for about 6 years, guys, and I was involved after I got out of the Marine Corps with an agency that's going to remain nameless. Because you know what? These guys got long and strong tentacles, and I don't want to put myself out there. I'm glad you guys don't say nothing about no last names. That's all I can tell you. But let's just make a long story short. I was involved with some agencies, and I saw cover-ups happening all the time, Brian and JD. And, not to brag, but I was involved in the failed rescue attempt of the hostages in Tehran. And I can only tell you this, Brian, JD, this is the God's honest truth as I'm standing here talking to you guys. There was 3 times as many Marines, Air Force, all the services were involved in that rescue attempt. There was 3 times as many people.
Okay, I'm sorry. I want to give you a chance. I want to give you a
crime of it.
I'm sorry to interject. I want to give you a chance to finish your story, but
told the Joint Chiefs,
what does this have to do with George Zimmerman?
Chance that there's going to be some really high winds.
Okay, pot him down for a second. Pot him down for a second. I want to give you an opportunity, Bruce, to continue your story. But my question to you is...
I was actually impressed how he just kept talking and not even listening to anything you were saying.
With all due respect, what does this have to do with Zimmerman? I'm going to pod you back up now. I want to be respectful to you, but we do have other callers on the line. So if you can please tell us how this correlates to the George Zimmerman, Trayvon Martin thing. Okay, so he's not... Are you listening to me, Bruce?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate your story, but can you please tell us what does this have to do with George Zimmerman and Trayvon Martin?
Well, because because I'm saying that it is in the fabric of our society, Brian, that these agencies are supposed to uphold the law, cover up things that really happened. And I'm not trying to change the subject of this guy going after them and suing them. What I'm saying is there's probably nobody that knows the truth of what actually physically took place that night.
All right. Well, I mean,
the people that were right there, whether there was contrived witnesses.
Bruce, I understand. Okay. Thank you.
What he's
saying
is that the conspiracy is plausible because it happens all over, in different spaces of the country, and he actually experienced one in Tehran.
I understand that. There are other shows that Bruce can call and do on this station where he can go on a tangent and, give a 10 or 15-minute story that's off topic, but we appreciate that. 257-5396. What we were talking about is Trayvon Martin and George Zimmerman. Zimmerman now suing the Trayvon Martin family for $100 million. I've made it very clear that I think George Zimmerman is a complete fool. He's a moron. He should have never been allowed to even own a weapon. You should never follow somebody, especially when the 911 dispatcher tells you not to. You are not a police officer. George Zimmerman was and probably still is a wannabe law enforcement agent police officer. And Trayvon Martin would still be alive today if he didn't follow him. With that being said, George Zimmerman didn't break the law for all intents and purposes. Tell me a law that George Zimmerman broke that night. 257-5396, the number to call. Let's go to Stephen. Stephen, you are next on the Vegas Take. What do you have to say about this?
Yeah, I just wish that Trayvon had a 45 so he could have put a bullet in his knuck. Fuck. I don't want to curse, but I'm saying he's going to get his. Karma has no expiration date. He's going to get his.
So let me ask you a question, Stephen. It's an interesting point you bring up. And by the way, as you know, I am not a George Zimmerman defender by any stretch of the imagination.
No, I'm not saying that.
Just to be clear on this one, I think he's a complete and utter scumbag, and he's trash. But with that being said, it's an interesting point you just brought up. So if Trayvon Martin legally owns a weapon there,
right,
I don't think he would have had the right to turn around just because he's being followed and kill somebody.
Yes, he can, because then it would be staying your ground. Remember, Florida has that idiotic law, but I mean, it's the law where you can stand your ground. So if you perceive that someone's transgressing, then you can take them out.
So if somebody is walking behind you 10 or 20 feet, you can make up the assumption, well, he must be trying to kill me, so you could just turn around and kill somebody? I don't know if that's true.
Oh, no. Now, we both don't know what happened at the moment, but apparently a 17-year-old kid felt threatened by this punk,
we
right?
know that, yes.
We know that. So the kid, because he physically had an edge on this punk, he probably got him on the ground and was beating him up.
Right.
And the punk, like the coward that he is, he couldn't fight back because he's a coward, and he shot the kid.
Yeah.
Now he's running around here like he's this dude, and I heard he's living in North Carolina. He is going to get his. And this guy who's writing it, and this lawsuit he's got about, he's a fool, man. Somebody need to put him out. Somebody need to put a hot one in him.
All right, hey, listen.
And it's going to happen.
Listen, Stephen. Stephen.
Well said, Stephen. Well said.
I respect your opinion, and I respect your passion, Stephen. This is a horrible situation, and I certainly feel, and I always have felt, for the Trayvon Martin family. It's horrible. No family, no parents should ever have to go through what the Trayvon Martin family have gone through. Now, if a witness went up there and there was faulty information, then I don't think you should be suing the family. I think you should be suing law enforcement.
They're suing the wrong people at
Sue
this
law
point.
enforcement, sue attorneys. 257-5396, the number to call. Let's go to Mike. Mike, thanks for calling in. What's on your mind?
What's up, Mike?
Hey, good morning, gentlemen. I kind of agree with you, Brian. I think that Zimmerman should have kept his nose further away. He should have waited for professional law enforcement. But as far as 911 goes, you hear all the time that the operators at 911 are a bunch of crackpots. I don't trust them. I absolutely trust nobody in the media. Look what they did to Richard Jewell.
Do you trust me?
And, Richard Jewell should win a lot of money, and I think Zimmerman is suing the wrong people. But I also think that Obama should be sued because he started the bias against the police force by saying that if I had a son, it would be Trayvon Martin. I mean, talk about bias.
Well, listen, I'm not going to defend Barack Obama.
That was a huge mistake in his presidency, in my opinion.
Just like with the Ferguson situation, I didn't like how Barack Obama treated that also. If you remember, he sent members of his administration to the Michael Brown funeral. Make no mistake about it. And I have no problem saying this. Michael Brown was a thug. He had just committed a strong-arm robbery, and he assaulted a police officer. Michael Brown got what he deserved, sadly. If you are dumb enough to attack a police officer and go after a police officer's done, and the evidence backs that up, you don't deserve to be alive.
And Michael Brown was 6'5", 310 pounds, and the cop was probably 5'7", 160. What was he? Or we'll say 180. What was he really supposed to do at that point?
Yeah,
and Mike, you're totally overpowered.
Right. Michael Brown was a thug, but I want to get down to the bottom. What was Martin doing between those houses? Does anybody know?
There is no evidence to support that he was taking a shortcut from 7-Eleven, and I will defend him. There is no evidence to support that he was doing anything wrong. So I am not going to sit here and go after Trayvon Martin. The poor kid is dead, and I wish that incident never happened. And if George Zimmerman wasn't a fool, I'm not saying he broke the law, but if he wasn't a fool who was a wannabe police officer, Trayvon Martin would still be alive today. Mike, I appreciate your phone call.
Yeah, good call, Mike.
I appreciate your call, Mike. Thank
bottom
you.
line, George Zimmerman, he assumed the risk when he decided to follow Trayvon Martin. He put him, and obviously the dispatch told him not to do it. Once he did that, once he knew that there was a potential danger,
he's a moron.
He assumed the risk. He wanted to make something happen. You don't know what it was, but he wanted to make something happen. It's just unfortunate that it got to the point that it did. Now I am very, very disappointed in Barack Obama, because what he did when he said this could have been my son was he created this massive division, and he also victimized African Americans in the process. And I really hope that he didn't do that on false pretenses or false terms, as Joel Gilbert is saying. That's why I'm going to watch this.
I'm going to watch it.
I might watch it twice.
Yeah, but you know what? There was a horrible movie that came out called Hanging Fruit. I think it was about the Michael Brown case where that they were defending Michael Brown, that Michael Brown didn't do anything wrong and the police officer was at fault. It was absolute and utter BS. It was crap. Okay, I'm not saying this documentary is going to be crap, so I'm going to watch it. And he made his point. We're taking your phone calls on this. George Zimmerman suing the Trayvon Martin family for $100 million. Your thoughts on that? Your thoughts on the case? The number to call 257-5396. Let's go to Ron. Ron, you're next. What's up?
What's up, Ron?
Good morning, gentlemen. Peace and love. How's everybody today?
Doing great.
Okay, now, you guys, there's a lot of misinformation going over the radio this morning on your show. You see, in the beginning, when the alteration took place, it took place near Zimmerman's car. That's where the pavement was. You see, Trayvon followed him back to his car and approached him and said, "What are you following me for?" This is the information that was released almost immediately after it happened.
There's nothing in the trial. Hold on.
Trayvon
Ron
attacked him and started smashing his face into the pavement.
Ron, let's talk.
Okay, happened,
all right,
man.
Ron, let's discuss this for a second. I followed the trial. I would imagine you did as well. There was nothing in the trial from either party that said that Trayvon Martin followed George Zimmerman. He turned around and he said, "What are you doing? Why are you following me?" Trayvon did not follow George Zimmerman. That's not true.
Went back to his car.
No, he didn't. No, he didn't. What are you talking about? Okay, so let me ask you a question. If that actually did happen, why is it that George Zimmerman's attorneys in the defense never brought that up, if that's a fact?
It was brought up.
No, it wasn't. No, it wasn't. You have no idea what you're talking about. That was not brought up because it didn't happen. Oh, Ron, what are you? Ron, all right, Ronnie.
Come on.
All right, yeah, I'm 39 years old, you dummy. Okay? This didn't happen 40 years ago. What are you talking about, Ron? Have you ever heard that, JD? Maybe I'm just wrong. Was Trayvon Martin following George Zimmerman back to his car? That never happened. It was never brought up. Ron is a Looney Tune.
Yeah, I've never heard that either.
Yeah, Ron the Looney Tune, thank you for the call. 257-5396 is the number to call. 702-257-5396. We're talking about this Zimmerman case. Now Zimmerman suing the Trayvon Martin family for $100 million. Your thoughts on that? Let's go to Marge. Marge, you're next on the Vegas Take. What's going on?
Hi, happy Friday.
Happy Friday, Marge. What do you think about this?
I guess as I told Jason, I'm confused about something. I didn't think that the Martin family have the wherewithal to be sued for $100 million.
Well, definitely not. Definitely not.
So is this just part of one massive lawsuit with maybe the police and other people involved?
Well, Marge, let me. It's a good question, Marge. Let me ask you this, because this is what I thought when I first heard this. Well, we have this this film that's coming out in a book. So I thought the reason why they did this was to just get the word out, so that could help promote the film. That was my initial reaction when I saw this. But now, after talking to this guy, Joel Gilbert, I got to tell you, maybe or maybe not. Maybe he's onto something. If it is true that this supposed girlfriend of Trayvon Martin, who didn't seem extremely intelligent and well-spoken on the stand, by the way, I remember her.
No, she wasn't.
If this was a falsified witness, don't go after the Trayvon Martin family. You know who you go after? You go after the people that put her up on the stand that knew it was a hoax.
Yeah.
You know?
And those are the attorneys, basically.
And one of the reasons why you have to at least look into what Joel Gilbert is saying is because we saw how Barack Obama reacted to this, and he was very, very aggressive and over the top.
Yeah, I didn't like it.
He wouldn't just do that for no reason. There had to be some rationale behind that, and so I believe this is worth looking into.
Listen, I did a sports show, Marge, back then when this whole Trayvon thing was going on, and even I talked a little bit about this case and dove into politics a little bit, and I said I was very disappointed in Barack Obama, talking about the race of this kid, not knowing the facts in the case. He did the same thing with the Michael Brown situation in Ferguson. It is one of my biggest criticisms of Barack Obama in 8 years, that I didn't like the way he handled these shootings and situations.
Yeah, and I kind of wonder when he said that about, he would be my son type of thing.
Yeah.
I was struck by that, and I'll remember that for a long, long time afterwards now.
Well, he was trying to get an emotion, get a passionate response.
Well, yeah, but there must have been a basis for him to say that too, and I think the point about the politics in this, I think that was an excellent point that your guest brought up. That he was trying to sway the community too.
Well, if that's the case, then it's certainly wrong, and I think Barack Obama is too intelligent and too smart of a human being to do that. I think we all rush to judgment in certain situations.
That's true.
And I think when even when a white officer kills an African American, we all assume that I shouldn't say we all, because I don't, but a lot of people assume that if a white officer kills an African American, it must have just been because he was black. There must be no credence in the shooting. And Marge, it's always good to hear from you. We appreciate the phone call.
Good call, Marge.
257-5396 is the number to call. Why don't we go to Brady? Brady, you're next on the Vegas Take. Go ahead.
What's up, Brady?
Yeah, good morning, gentlemen. I think you got the girlfriends mixed up of Trayvon. The smart one that was on the phone with Trayvon when this all happened got switched out with the dumb one who was like 18 years old and in ninth grade. So you got your story mixed up. That's why the amount of the settlement that he's going after is so big, because same with what's doing what the Democrats are trying to do to Trump. You don't mess with the witness and you don't tamper with the evidence.
Can I ask you a question, though, Brady? Do you feel for Trayvon Martin's family?
Yes, I do.
Okay, well, I'm glad to hear that, because we all could agree, I would hope, Trayvon Martin did not deserve to die that day. He should still be alive. He was a young kid. He was scared. I wish he didn't start that physical altercation. I can understand why he started it, but we wish, and I hope you would agree with this, Brady, don't you wish that George Zimmerman didn't take matters into his own hands and get out of his car and follow this kid?
Well, that's the problem. You got a neighborhood watch going on.
It doesn't mean you should be following people that you think might be suspicious.
But the thing is with like neighborhood watches, I have it in my neighborhood out in the country, and thank God them people are followed. I almost am a big fan of stop and frisk. I don't. If somebody looks suspicious,
but he's not a police officer. But hold on. But stop and frisk. You're talking about law enforcement. George Zimmerman was not a police officer.
That's different. I'm saying, but if you're on a neighborhood watch and you're going up to somebody, maybe the guy does look like he's doing something shady. You never know.
But he wasn't doing anything shady, though. But
I don't agree with him. I don't agree with him getting blasted. But the neighborhood watch is set up so you do question somebody who's coming into your area that you don't know who it is.
But that being said, Brady, the police officer told him not. The dispatch told him not to follow Trayvon Martin.
And by the way, this is also very important. Trayvon Martin wasn't robbing a house or doing anything wrong. He wasn't breaking the law. He's an innocent kid that was driving home with Skittles.
And it's hard.
Or walking home, excuse me, with Skittles and iced tea.
Even if something like that was going to take place in the next 10 or 15 minutes, you can't assume that and act on an assumption, especially based on a stereotype.
I'm glad to hear that Brady showed his 5 seconds of humility there. Brady, I appreciate that.
I was surprised.
I'm glad you feel for the Trayvon Martin family. I was actually surprised at that response as well. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, this is going to be a lot of fun. Former UNLV quarterback Caleb Herring will be joining us in studio. His thoughts on the UNLV football situation, and right now they don't have a head coach. We'll take a break. Be back right after this.